Welcome back to the Holler. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler. Hollers hollering all across the state thanks to your support. Shout out to Lisa Parker. Shout out Abby Rubenfeld. All right, let's get right to it. State Representative James Talarico, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. We're on, I guess, day 2 or day 3. I don't know how you want to count it of this quorum break. I'm in Illinois, ensuring that our Republican colleagues back home don't have a quorum to pass this rigged map and give Donald Trump a power grab in DC.
At what point did you guys decide this was necessary?
We had gotten word that they may try this mid-decade redistricting a few months ago, right after the regular session ended. I was praying that it wouldn't come to this. I know my colleagues and I hoped it wouldn't come to this because breaking quorum, leaving our state is not easy. Many of my colleagues are leaving behind young children. Some of them are leaving behind aging parents. All of us are leaving behind our day jobs. As you know, in Texas, we're paid $600 a month as state legislators. That's before taxes. So we have day jobs to make ends meet. So this is not an easy thing to do. It's not a decision we made lightly, but we feel so strongly that this power grab in Texas is a threat, not just to all Texans, but all Americans, because Donald Trump is trying to shield himself from the voters, from accountability. He's worried he's going to lose the midterm elections. And so he's asked Texas Republicans to find him 5 more seats, kind of like he asked Georgia Republicans to find him 11,000 votes. Thankfully, Georgia Republicans said no. Texas Republicans said, how about Thursday? And that's why we felt we had to leave the state to stop this power grab from going through.
One of the aspects of this that is particularly gross is that this special session was supposed to be about flood relief for victims. And instead, I think they've had something like 6 hearings about this power grab and only 1 about the flooding. What can you say for Texans and people in general about priorities that they're on display here?
Yeah, Texans are still mourning the loss of life in the Hill Country and across Central Texas from those July 4th floods. And that is the real emergency that we should be coming to the state capitol to address, bringing people together across the aisle to work on flood mitigation and disaster relief and ensuring something like this never happens again in our state. But instead of doing that, Greg Abbott and Texas Republicans are using those flood victims and their families as leverage to pass this rigged map, corrupt the democratic process. We showed up at the first day of the special session 2 weeks ago, and we begged our Republican colleagues to prioritize flood victims and their families, and they refused to do so. So this feels like rock bottom in some ways for Texas Republicans. It is cynical politics at its worst, deeply immoral, and we need to call out this talking point that Republicans are putting out there that somehow we're the ones that are abandoning flood victims.
Right. And actually, we saw something similar here in Tennessee where we had a flood in East Tennessee. They used the special session about that to pass their voucher scam. A mutual friend of ours who's on here, Katie, sent me this.
Yeah.
This is attack ads that are going on about the flood relief. So not only are they not prioritizing it, they're now attacking you over flood relief as though that's something they really care about. How transparent is that?
Right. I mean, again, this is why people hate politics. Politicians will use even something like a horrific flood to play games and to consolidate their own power. Typically, state legislators adjust district boundaries called redistricting, and we do that at the beginning of a decade after we get a new census. The problem is in states like Texas, the politicians draw their own lines, and oftentimes they use it, consolidate their own power for themselves and their party. That's called gerrymandering. That is a problem in red states and in blue states. Problem in both parties. It's wrong. We got to take the politics out of redistricting. I've filed a bill to do that in Texas to create a citizen-led independent redistricting process. That bill hasn't even gotten a hearing. But what's happening here in Texas right now is a whole nother level. Texas Republicans drew our maps in 21 when they were supposed to. We didn't break quorum, but now Trump is asking those Texas Republicans to redraw the Texas maps to get him 5 more seats because he's worried about losing the next election. Redistricting in the middle of the decade, they are cheating. 2 football teams coming out of the locker room at halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules in the second half to make sure they win. I mean, all of us would recognize that as blatant cheating. They're going to cheat. We're not going to play. And that's why we left the state, why we've killed these maps for this special session, and why we're not coming back until we can get assurances that we're going to solve actual problems like flood mitigation and not play politics to do Donald Trump's bidding.
One of the things that you mentioned is that you had a bill about fair districting. I know that Democrats do this also. Democrats actually, if there was a national fair districting bill, would support it.
Yes.
And Republicans wouldn't. So this notion that this is both sides do it, I reject that, because if there was a national districting bill, in Congress right now. Dems would pass it, Republicans wouldn't. That says it all right there. And you're evidence of that in Texas.
States like California do have an independent citizen-led
Right.
redistricting process, which is great. But I don't think that Democrats should unilaterally disarm. One side is intent on cheating, which Republicans in Texas are doing right now. Then all bets are off. Democrats should respond. When you have a bully on the playground, you don't lay down and play dead. You have to stand up to that bully. You have to look him in the eye and you can't blink. That's exactly what blue states with Democratic trifectas should be doing right now, making plans to retaliate if Texas goes through with this. All I'm saying is that can't be the ultimate vision. The ultimate vision is to get politics out of this process, because gerrymandering, I believe, is the rot at the core of our broken political system. It's why we can't make progress on housing, on healthcare, on education, on flood relief. This is what is stopping us from fixing this democracy so that it works for regular people.
Right. And that seems pretty clear. People are wondering who wins the game if this becomes extreme gerrymandering as opposed to fair districting. I looked this up. I don't know if I found the right answer, but what I saw is that Republicans have done this more than Democrats. Republican gerrymandering gives them something like 16 more than fair maps would. At the end of the day, they are kind of winning the game based on that. Is that your understanding also?
That's right. And again, this is even more egregious than typical gerrymandering. It's even more blatant. It's even more discriminatory. Donald Trump is trying to insulate himself from the will of the public, trying to protect his majority, even if the American people want a Congress that will hold him accountable. The founders wanted checks and balances. They didn't want unlimited power. That's what Donald Trump is attempting to grab right now in Texas. And it affects all of us. This is not just a Texas problem. This is an American problem. If we don't recognize the threat this poses to the democratic process, to free and fair elections, then we are walking down a dangerous path.
So where does this go? Obviously, you guys need help. $500 a day, you're all getting fined. It's costing you guys, so you need help. What's the website?
Well, I want to be clear. We are going to be paying these fines ourselves out of our personal bank accounts, which I already mentioned, we don't make a lot of money and I don't have a lot of money, but I am willing to do what I have to pay these fines. I knew I was going to face consequences, but there are a lot of other costs associated with this: food and travel and lodgings. We do need support for all of this. Our hardworking staff members, there's about 10 staff members here that are supporting 57 members. They're working around the clock to make this happen. Folks can donate. Caucus website. You can donate to any of our campaign accounts. It's all going to the same operational expenses. And we've already been flooded with donations. It's going to be a long haul, and we're going to need that financial support if we expect to hold out.
Wherever this ends up, basically you've highlighted this issue. It seems like they've kind of overreached. If the end result is something that exposes what goes on with this gerrymandering and leads us towards more fair districting, maybe they've done a service to the country with this overreach. I want to shift while I have you here. By the way, I screwed up last week. You were supposed to be on, and Justin Jones got in this whole dust up the Tesla tunnel and I ended up missing it. I wanted to ask you, while I have you here, you were on with Rogan not too long ago, and you talked about a thing that I think you're better at talking about than most Democrats, which is where Christianity and politics meet. What has been the reaction to a lot of the things that you said on Rogan's podcast? Grandson of a Baptist preacher. I think you're becoming a preacher or are a preacher yourself. And I highly encourage people to go watch the entire Rogan interview. It was really good. You talk about Christianity and politics, and actually in Tennessee, we're the highest percentage of evangelicals in the entire country. What was the reaction to that?
I mean, the reaction was overwhelming. I've gotten messages from all over the state, all over the country, and it's not just from Democrats. I've heard from independents and Republicans too. Really felt like they could connect on this topic of faith. And faith is why I'm in public service. You mentioned my granddad, who was a Baptist preacher in South Texas. You know, he taught me at a very early age, Jesus gave us 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor. He said Christianity is a simple religion. It's not an easy religion, but it is a simple religion. And that love for God and that love for neighbor is what motivated me to become a middle school teacher on the west side of San Antonio. And it's what motivated me to ultimately run for state representative, to love my neighbors through public policy, you know, reducing prescription drug costs, expanding access to childcare, funding our neighborhood schools. All of that is how I try to make my neighbor's life a little easier. And I think that's what politics and democracy is really all about. We use all this academic language, but really we're just trying to help our neighbors out on a grand scale. And that's why why I do this. And my faith is what gives me the strength and the courage and the peace to be able to do something like this, fleeing my home state to break quorum and risk consequences to stop this power grab. I want to explain that to people. I want to be myself. And I think that's resonating. And I hope more Democrats can do that. Raphael Warnock in Georgia, you mentioned the Tennessee Three. Folks talking about their faith, talking about their values is ultimately how we're going to connect with more people, build a bigger tent, and take power back to make people's lives better.
I think it's a really important thing to be talking about. I'm Jewish, raised Jewish, but this is a Christian country, generally speaking, like 65, 75%. It's important to meet people where they are. And I think too often Democrats think, okay, we need to separate church and state, which is true, but you also need to be able to speak in terms of faith and appeal to people's character, especially in this moment when this guy's in charge. I think that is a way back for a lot of people. So how do you get people comfortable with it that aren't grandchildren of Baptist preachers?
Those two commandments of loving God and loving neighbor come from the Jewish scriptures. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi, Jewish the day he was born, he was Jewish the day he died. So our traditions are linked in this way. Commonality of loving others, of doing unto others as you would want done to you. I mean, that is present in all the major faith traditions, present not just in Judaism and Christianity, but also in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Islam. There is this heart at the core of all of these major traditions about loving other people, treating others as you want to be treated. And it feels like, especially in this era of American politics, 10 years of Donald Trump, we have to return to that golden rule, simple moral code that we've forgotten in our politics. And that's not a blue or red thing. That is just a human thing. I think we need to talk about it a lot more.
I think you're right. One of the interviews that I read with you recently, you talked about this need for generational change. How old are you? I don't even know.
36.
36. All right. You're not that young, but you're still young enough. And you did mention that you're considering the Senate thing. Is that possible still? Where are you on that?
Yep, still considering it. Obviously, this quorum break has taken precedent. My focus is here right now because I was hired by 200,000 people in Central Texas to fight for them. I intend on doing that job before I start applying to other jobs. And so once this quorum break is over, and hopefully after we kill this corrupt map, I'll be looking at that Senate seat and seeing if that's right for me and, more importantly, right for the people of Texas.
Just as a final thing, and then I'll let you go. And again, I appreciate you doing this. Last night, Rachel Maddow issued like a pretty stark warning. Basically, we have an authoritarian leader now. Crossed the line, she said. And I think part of it was because of what they're doing in Texas. And obviously firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner so that now we can't trust anything coming out of the government. I'm surprised it took them that long. In terms of Rachel's warning, how are you feeling about where we are along the spectrum from democracy to authoritarianism? And do you share her concern?
I do. It's why we broke quorum, because this is not just a threat to Texans. It's not just a threat to the American people. It's a threat to the American experiment. The idea that the people can elect representatives of their own choice, the fact that the people can change their government if they choose to, all of that is at risk right now. It feels like we've in some ways become numb to this over the last 10 years, come to expect this. We can't allow ourselves to be numb. We have to be outraged. Democracy demands our outrage and our courage. And that is what we're trying to inspire in people. Texas Democrats, as you know, have a long history of being fearless. Texans don't surrender easily. And I hope that our example is an inspiration to Democrats, independents, and Republicans all over the country and can show people how to stand up to a would-be tyrant. Before I leave, I just wanted to thank you. You and this outlet have always had our backs in Texas, and that is so appropriate. I know you and I have talked about the fact that maybe the most famous Texan, Davy Crockett, was a Tennessean.
Yep.
When we were fighting authoritarianism, you all had our backs back then, and you have our backs now. And there's a special bond between our two states. It means a lot to me. And so I just want to thank you for always supporting us and having our back.
That means a lot, James. Really appreciate it. It's sincere. You have been speaking truth to power for a long time, and you've been saying things that need to be said. So really do appreciate it. I've heard whispers that you may pay a visit. Is there any way we can get you down here at some point?
I would love that. I don't have to be convinced to come. Depends on where I'm at. We'll see where this leads, but I'd love to get myself down there at some point.
Consider us having joined the call to get Talarico to Tennessee. James, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you, sir.